So let's play a game. How does this crying make you feel?
He said it's okay.
Does this crying trigger you? Are you feeling anxious? So this cry is activating within us a deep and instinctual reaction and response within our adult brain. And we'll explore the psychology and biology of why this triggers us and why we have freakouts on airplanes. First, let's talk about evolution. From an evolutionary standpoint, a baby's cry is supposed to get our response, which is exactly what it does most of the time. If you've ever been around a baby crying with an ear-pitching scream, babies are completely vulnerable and they are dependent on us for their survival. And their cry is nature's way of making sure that they are heard, no matter what, which is why the cry can be so loud, so high-pitched, because it is designed to trigger us and get our attention. Early humans, if a baby's cries were unmet, it could threaten both the child's survival and the survival of the family unit. That's the whole point. It's supposed to trigger us to respond. But the psychology and biology of it goes much further than that. When we hear a baby cry, our brains react almost immediately to that. So the crying or the sound actually invokes areas of our brain that are linked to emotions and empathy, such as the amygdala. And that kind of processes emotions like fear and urgency, and also the anterior cortex, which helps us feel empathy and helps us respond in a proper emotional manner. For many adults, especially parents, this emotional response is very hard to ignore, if not impossible to ignore. It triggers our caregiving instinct, the desire to comfort and protect that individual and infant who is completely vulnerable and can't help themselves. Babies' cries are actually meant to be unique, and that research has shown that the frequency and intensity of a baby's cry is very effective at eliciting a response from us, especially an emotional response. It's almost as if our brains are hardwired to respond to the crying. It's not just about hearing the cry, it's about interpreting what that baby needs, because cries are meant to signal all types of different things from the baby. Crying is the only way babies can communicate with us. They don't have formal language expression, so crying and the different ways they cry, because yes, there's more than one cry, especially if you have a baby of your own, you'll figure out very quickly the different cries mean different things. Anything from hunger, being cold, being too hot, being lonely, needing a diaper change. All types of cries mean all types of things, and it's up to us to interpret that. Our brains almost at that point go into fight or flight mode, or they go into overdrive trying to figure out what the problem is. Why is baby crying? How we can fix it. Because we're solely focused on getting the baby to stop crying. I don't know if you've ever been trapped on a flight with a baby screaming. I have. And especially if it's your child, even if it's not your child, you're gonna feel anxious. When you hear that cry, you're gonna want that cry to stop as much as that parent wants that cry to stop. Because nobody likes to hear the sound of a baby crying, because it triggers something deep and biological within us that we need to get those needs met to stop that crying, because it is putting everybody on edge. It is making us all feel that way on the inside, that whatever it is, it just needs to stop. It's because that distress of hearing that baby cry is almost like a shared distress amongst us. Even if it's not your responsibility, you kind of feel anxious and you kind of feel distressed from hearing that baby cry, and you want those babies' needs met as much as the parents do. Simply put, we're all hardwired for empathy. We are empathetic to those responses for the most part. I'm not gonna say everybody is. When we hear a baby cry, even if it's not our baby, it's us on an emotional level, taps into our sense of connection, our instinct to nurture deep down inside, to basically ensure the survival of the next generation, believe it or not. Of course, not all crying is an emergency. If you've been around a baby crying, all the crying can mean different things, but it's supposed to elicit us to be emergent in reacting to those needs in a timely manner. We know deep down that when that baby cries, it is a signal for help in one way or another. It's basically telling us we need to get on it, figure it out, attend to that baby right now to get those needs met. to stop that crying. So let's break down the biological response this has in us as humans when a baby cries. So first off, when a baby cries, it's going to release cortisol levels. What are cortisol levels? Simply, those are our stress hormones. When you hear that cry, your cortisol levels start to go up. And that's not just you. That's not just the parent. That's whoever's around typically. Especially if that crying is going to be prolonged or it is high-pitched, because cries come in all different sounds, and from low-pitched whining to high-pitched screaming or alarm bells. And depending on how long baby has been crying for, that is going to affect our cortisol levels. It's also going to trigger our sympathetic nervous system. So what that means is we're basically put into fight or flight mode. It'll make us more focused, more alert, more tunnel vision on figuring out what baby needs, how to fix those needs, how to get those needs met. And it's going to make us stop everything else going on around us in the background and focus on that one problem, which is getting baby to calm down, get those needs met. It's also going to elicit some empathy from us, not just from us, but from others, because at the biological response, most people should have some empathy. And when they hear a baby crying, it sounds like a signal for help. It's distress. And parent and caregivers alike, strangers, whoever's out, they're going to feel the baby's distress, because they're also going to feel the anxiety, because deep down within a lot of us, there is empathy. We have an empathetic response to that baby. We just want those babies' needs to get met so that they can stop crying, because it really triggers us. It's also, of course, going to increase your heart rate and your blood pressure. Go figure. Especially if it's for a prolonged period of time, not to mention having all those cortisol levels heightened and increased, especially if the crying goes on and on. So motivational and attention shifting responses. So this is going to affect certain areas in our brain. With the screaming, it's gonna have us pay closer attention, and it's gonna zone out everything else going on around us, filter out all those distractions. It's also going to trigger something within us to problem solve. Figure out why is baby crying and fix it, because there's a multitude of reasons baby can be crying. And our job, our goal as parents and caregivers is to fix it. There's also some hormonal balances that might occur. So when we are trying to fix baby's problems, whether that means feeding baby, rocking baby, spending out, hours driving around, walking them, doing whatever we need to do in those desperate attempts to get baby to calm down, it's actually going to increase our oxytocin levels, which is it's kind of like the bonding hormone within us, so that we can bond physically and emotionally with baby and just build that bond of family. This is not only going to affect us emotionally, but it's going to affect baby's attachment and our attachment as well to baby, especially the more responsive we are to those needs in all those situations. And this is not just for mom, this is also for dad or for whoever's taking care of baby. Basically, the evolutionary purpose is the cries are supposed to grab our attention, stop us in our tracks, and make us respond. That's why they are so high-pitched, so triggering for a lot of us. They can drive us crazy, make us insane, especially if we're hearing it for long periods of time, because even if it is your child or not, it is still affecting you at the biological level, because we were designed to take care of each other, and hearing a baby cry signals a need for help, that a baby is in distress, and we want to do anything we can calm baby down and meet those needs. It's meant to trigger something deep within us, and it does. For the most part, it grabs our attention and shifts our needs to only focus on baby and baby's needs to be met. That is what we are designed to do. We are social creatures, and responding to babies and pretty much just ensuring the survival of baby or our species is just something at the evolutional standpoint. The point is, when they cry, it forces us to stop, figure out, and get to the bottom of it, of why they're crying, and attend to those unmet needs to comfort the baby and for the survival of the baby. So next time you hear a baby cry, remember, it's not just a noise. It is a way baby's trying to communicate with us, because they have no language ability. They can't express how they're feeling, and crying is the only way they can do it. It's a call to action to get us to meet baby's unmet needs. If you think baby's cries don't mean different things, Well, you'll be shocked, especially when you become a parent. You're gonna learn that there's so many different cries baby can have. I have some videos posted about that. Link it below. Different cries can mean different things, and you will get the hang of it, I promise. At first, it's very confusing, but let me tell you, after a few weeks, you'll figure out which cry means what, and it will not all sound the same to you. Thanks for watching.